Good afternoon, everybody. I'm just going to take a few minutes to talk to everybody about the UCISA IG group. And I have to confess, when we were actually doing this conference, when we were arranging it and organising it, we thought, this is a really good opportunity for us to, talk about the work we do, bring it to everybody's attention, that kind of thing. And then not for 1 second did I think, when I volunteered to do this, the morning was a disaster. And everybody's looking at me thinking, you've got another thing coming, Mr. Fiddis. But anyway, I hope you all agree with me. I think this morning and the presentations and the various points that have been made by the presenters, I found it really fascinating, and I really enjoyed everything I've taken part in listening to and participating with. So I personally would like to thank everybody that's been involved. And the other people I'd like to thank are the committee specifically and the IG committee more widely, who have all taken part to a greater or lesser extent. Now, the two people who really do need to be singled out are Matt Flower, who's really chaired all of this and done an enormous amount of work. Now, I don't know where Matt is. Is he further out? He's over there, so I'd like Matt to stand up. Now, I won't embarrass everybody, but I would like Matt and particularly Dave to make themselves visible to everybody so that everybody knows who they are. Dave's the IG chair, actually. And however, scattered around the room, there are other members of IG. If you'd also just like to sort of stand up and wave, wherever you might be. Right, there's Steve, yeah, okay. So there's 3 or 4 there. And the reason I mention, obviously, Arthur there as well. The reason I mention that is because of what I'm about to talk about. So, the infrastructure group and why you want to be part of it. So that's me, and you might have seen me around today. And as you can see here, I'm very proud of Edinburgh University's new grassy lawn in Old College. So I thought you'd like to see that as well. It's a new addition. Before that was a car park. So I think that's much better. That's progress for you. It's only taken us the best part of 400 years to get the grass in the right place, as it was meant to be, designed by William Playfair. But there you are, isn't that lovely? And that's me there. And both of those pictures were taken on the 2 sunny days in Edinburgh last year. So thank you very much for that. So what is UCISA all about, and why is IG important? We've been hearing about some of those things this morning. John mentioned some points, and I'd like to just come back to that. And it's really about promoting best practice across the sector. Now, this really means a lot to everybody that's working with IG, and it should mean a lot to everybody, because we're all interested in doing the best we can for our individual institutions and for ourselves, and collectively just making things better. So we're presented with lots of challenges and lots of opportunities to learn and lots of opportunities to do things perhaps differently, more effectively. So UCISA IG is very interested in bringing together people who are interested in achieving those outcomes. And so that's why I volunteered, however many years ago. And there are some faces around here who are ex-members of IG who have now returned to do little bits and pieces for us, and you'll probably recognise some faces. So what are the roles and skills that we're actually interested in? Well, fundamentally, everybody that's here has probably got something to offer IG, because you've come here and attending, you're interested in the material we're talking about. So you probably have something to offer. But we're also interested in people who are enthusiastic, people who've got an energy, a desire to make things better, not just for themselves, not just for their organisations, but for the whole sector, to actually make things different and to improve things. Best practice. So what kind of commitments are we interested in? Well, the commitments, we meet, as most of the groups do, on average about 4 times a year, something like that. And we also are involved in setting up events like this. So myself, Matt, and well, particularly Matt and Dave, have been responsible for today's conference and tomorrow's conference. And it's actually the participation in the development of these conferences and events. It's a really very important thing that we do, because it gives everybody the opportunity to get together, talk about things, either about the subject matter at the presentation, but also to network and to get involved with things outside and speak to the vendors and so on and so forth. So that's extremely, extremely useful. So, yeah, I've mentioned we do events like today. We have discussions regularly across the different forums that we use, and these are relatively active, it has to be said, and particularly current, so things that come up. We like to see lots of people participating, offering their ideas, how they do them within different institutions. We make networks, obviously. You can put something to one of our mailing lists, and you never know, somebody from a university you've never actually heard of before or you've never worked with before might respond to that. They may have tackled exactly the issue you're trying to address. And they may come back to you the same day telling you about some experience they've had where you might want to try something like that, or you might want to try something different. It's an extremely powerful resource, an extremely effective way of getting information back to you that's relevant and tuned for your consumption. Important to remember that not every source of information is specifically thinking about the kinds of things that we're interested in. Sometimes they think about different kinds of priorities. So we like to publish good practice. So we're seeking examples of good practice and ideas and ways of doing things differently that can accelerate, and to use a term I'm not that comfortable with, leverage, best results from the IT infrastructure that we've invested in. So that's also great. And we've published a number of case studies. We've actually asked people to help us with that, where we've singled out activity in particular areas, and they've actually been happy enough to bring those case studies to us, and we've published those, and they're available on the UCISA website as well, on our website. So we'd like to have more of that. We'd like to see more of those case studies, and we'd be interested in talking to anybody who would like to take part in doing something like that. Okay, so what's in it for you as an individual, and what's in it for you as a member of an institution? Well, obviously it's going to give you experience and broaden your personal network. And that's what's happening today. We're meeting new people. I've done a little bit to try and walk around and say hello to some of you, to see how you've been getting on today, and hopefully you've been having a good experience. That's ultimately going to be a good thing, and we're all going to feel a lot happier if you go away from the next couple of days thinking, do you know, that was a damn good conference. I'm going to come back in 2 years' time, or whenever the next time we're doing it. So your personal network's developed. You might even go away from this conference, and if we're lucky, some of you might go away with some ideas of what you might like to do and innovate in your own organizations. Think, do you know, that was a really good idea. I must go and speak to that guy I met there. Yeah, what was his name? Matt Flower. I'll go and speak to him about that, because they're doing that thing that I know we really ought to be doing as well. That DevOps thing, that guy Arthur, now I remember he talked about that. It's very, very important, that kind of creativity and being able to actually think about how we'd like to do things differently in our own organizations. Your personal development, you get an opportunity to do just exactly what I'm doing here, standing in front of a lot of people who you don't know particularly well and embarrassing yourself, which is always good. And that's a growing experience. Good. And you also have, as I say, great examples of good practice or best practice, sources for contacts and so on and so forth. You can even collaborate. I know myself from my own experience working with infrastructure group, if I hadn't been in the infrastructure group and I hadn't been involved and I hadn't been participating, I would never have met some of the people who've been able to help me back in my organization with some of the hardest problems that we've had to solve. And I think that's just a fantastic thing. So institutionally we're all benefiting from that, collectively we're benefiting from that, and individually we're benefiting from that. So that's a lot of benefits. And one of the things that I think is really important, and again, I think you touched on it, John. You mentioned the fact that, you have an opportunity to contribute. And, walking away from something and saying, I actually made a difference. You don't get that many opportunities in life to actually walk away from something and say, I made a difference. I influenced a better outcome. And this is one, and this group is one where you can actually participate and make a difference. So, I'd like you to think about this. if making a difference to HE and making a difference to IG and to UCISA and to all of our interests matters to you, then have a think about joining up and volunteering to work with the infrastructure group. I can assure you, you won't regret it. I can assure you of that. So have a think about your commitments at your work. I mean, obviously, number of days that you have to commit to actually take part and get involved in organising things like this. It's an important consideration. Think about those things. Get in touch. And if you fancy it, we'd love to hear from you. And particularly if you fancy doing it, get in touch with me, or speak to me, or speak to any one of the guys from the committee who are floating around today. And we'd love to speak to you about it. All right, so that's my email address there. And I'm going to be around, obviously, for the next couple of days. I look forward to speaking to anybody who wants to have a chat about the infrastructure group. All right.